These stories take more time to find, but if you'd like your story featured, send it to r/Malliem and use PostFlare to tag it as a true scary story. Why I'm never going in the ocean again. Massive trigger warning for thalassophobia and submechanophobia, as well as mild gore, maybe? Listen at your own risk. I love being at the beach, walking a bit in the water, finding cool seashells and rocks, just laying on a towel and maybe take a nap or enjoy the sunset with a drink. It's nice on a hot day. Since I'm a goth, I often underestimate the weather and overheat, so the beach is nice because I can cool off in the water. But I will never, ever swim in the ocean again. I've always had a fear of deep water. It freaks me out. Especially since the ocean here in Norway is pitch black and you can't see anything below you or around you. Every time I went swimming when I was a kid, my stomach would drop and I would start freaking out. That unsettling feeling it gives me makes my skin crawl. It's not something I can even describe properly. People think I'm overreacting when I say the closest word I could put for it is panic, but I'm not. What is underneath me? What am I sharing this water with? What if something just grabs me and drags me underneath? Drowning is a painful way to go. It's safe to say I've avoided deep water as much as I can. Last summer, I was with my friends and we decided to go to the beach since it was so hot that day. When we arrived, I laid out my towel and changed into my bikini, and time went by, of all of us just chatting and having fun. Someone even brought alcohol, so after some time went by, we were all pretty tipsy. Then, one of my friends suggested we should swim out to a floating bridge in the middle of the ocean. It was pretty far out, and I could feel my heart beating faster just looking at it. Floating bridges have always creeped me out. It just doesn't sit right with me. Why would it just be there? What is underneath it? Objects in the water freak me out so badly. But everyone agreed and said it would be fun, and so I watched them all run into the water. I hesitated, and my friends started cheering for me to join them. At that point, I was already beginning to feel my throat getting tighter and my panic meter begin to rise, but I didn't want to ruin the mood, so I told myself to woman up. It's just water. You'll be fine. It's a 7-minute swim at most, maybe less if you go fast. You'll be fine. Stop being a pussy. I stood up and began walking towards the water. My friend began dragging my arm, telling me to hurry up as the others had already began swimming towards it. I started swimming. Surprisingly, I'm a very good swimmer. It's a shame I'll never be able to use that talent. I swam to the point I couldn't stand anymore. Then a bit more. And a bit more. I was halfway to the bridge when I stopped in the water to take a breath. I had underestimated how far it was. Most of my friends were already on the bridge, goofing off and throwing each other into the water, splashing water on each other. I began swimming again after gathering myself until my foot got stuck. Not just my foot, half my fucking leg. From the tips of my toes to slightly above my knee, stuck inside something tight and painful. At first, I just tried to pull my leg out. I'm pretty skinny, average, somewhere around there, so I thought I could just wiggle my leg out with no problem before panic set in. Oh, I was so wrong. My leg was entirely jammed inside the pipe. I couldn't move, I couldn't pull it out. Plus, the alcohol made my body weaker. I was stuck. I began hyperventilating. I was too scared to even scream. I was just there, hyperventilating in the middle of the ocean, stuck inside something unknown I couldn't see due to the water being too dark. I realized after a minute or so whatever I was stuck in wasn't alive. So I gathered my thoughts and felt around with my hand. It was a rusted metal pipe. Metal pipe that seemed like it got more narrow as it went down, that my leg had somehow slipped into and I was now stuck. I finally registered what was happening and began screaming, but my friends were too far away and were screaming too much themselves to hear me. Not in horror like me, though. I could feel my airways close up and my head begin to swim, not just from the alcohol. It felt like all my blood was being drained from my body. My guts tangled themselves in a knot, and at that moment, I thought I was gonna die. And I wasn't sure if it was from a heart attack, oxygen deprivation from hyperventilating, drowning, or something in the water. I was stuck in a rusty pipe in the middle of the fucking ocean. That was the only thought inside my head. Nothing else. I couldn't focus on anything else other than that. It was as if my whole world was narrowed down to my current situation, and I felt a sense of impending doom fill me. What if there was something living inside the pipe? As if the situation wasn't terrifying enough already, I noticed the water around me changing color, despite the darkness of it. I could tell it had a warmer tint to it. Blood. I was fucking bleeding. I didn't know from where or why or what caused it. I began trying to pull my leg out again, absolutely panicking. There aren't even a lot of sharks in Norway, but who knows? Things can come in from other waters. There have been cases of sharks found in foreign waters before. My head began pounding again, thinking back to all the cases of washed-up giant octopuses I had read about in Norway. Greenland sharks, eels, orcas. As I kept moving, the blood just kept coming on. I was stuck there bleeding like crazy, and I didn't even know from where. Did I get my period in the water? Did something attack me? What the fuck happened? The water was too cold to feel anything anyways, or maybe I was just in such a state of panicky body I ignored the stinging pain in my leg. Eventually, one of my friends finally noticed me having a full-blown panic attack there and rushed over to help me. She went underwater, and after what felt like forever, she finally got my leg out of the pipe. That was the most freeing moment in my life. I could have kissed her right there if it wasn't for the fact I was so scared. When she came up for air again, she looked concerned. "Your leg is all fucked up. Are you okay? What happened?" Hello? I don't even remember what happened after that. The aftermath was a blur. I was dissociating and just staring off into space as if I had just been traumatized, which, in all honesty, I kind of was. All I remember is ending up on that bridge with all my friends examining my leg. It was nasty. I had deep cuts on my feet, and my lower leg had a cut so deep it was showing that layer of flesh that looks like beans. Blood was gushing out all over the bridge. I was panicking still. What if something in the water smelled the blood and was now waiting for me to get back in? After a while of back and forth, my friends convinced me to get back into the water and to swim back to land so I could find something to stop the bleeding. I was already lightheaded from 3 things at once: alcohol, anxiety, and anemia. Due to how much I'd moved around, I was on the verge of passing out, something that often happens to me on a daily basis. Even simple things like standing up too fast make me woozy. I hesitantly dipped back into the water and swam as fast as I possibly could back to land. When I emerged from the water, I still remember the horrified stares of the families and other people at the beach. I swear I even saw some parents cover their kids' eyes. Probably because my entire leg was covered in blood, and I had a gaping wound across my lower leg. As I was drying up and trying to process what the actual hell just happened, I could see parents taking their kids out of the water and telling them not to go in the water while looking around worriedly. Some even shot me some dirty looks as if it was my fault that happened to me. I still think about this event a lot, and every time I look at that scar on my leg, I'm reminded of that day. I now realize I probably just cut myself on the metal pipe while struggling to get out of it. But for a while, I was convinced there was something in the pipe that had been eating at my flesh. My mind had a field day making up images what the creature could have looked like. So, this is why I never go swimming anymore. No need to thank me for giving you a new fear. My aunt's upper unit. My aunt owns a duplex. She lives in the downstairs unit, and for years she rented out the upstairs. At one point she had a tenant, an older woman with several health issues, who had been living there for quite a while. The woman was quiet, mostly kept to herself, and with her often in and out of the hospital, long absences weren't unusual. So when things got quiet up there, my aunt didn't really think twice. At first. One day, my aunt was on the phone with my mom when she mentioned something strange. She said a terrible smell had started creeping down the stairs that led to the upper unit. Those stairs went from the upstairs kitchen down to the back exit door and also a secondary entrance to my aunt's home. She hadn't heard the tenant moving around upstairs in a few days, so she figured maybe the woman had gone back to the hospital and left food out, meat or something, that had gone bad. My mom, younger and a little morbid, half-jokingly said, "What if she died up there and that's what you're smelling?" My aunt was totally grossed out and told her not to say such things. But as they continued talking, my aunt couldn't shake the thought. After a moment, she asked, more serious now, "What if she really is dead up there?" My mom suggested my aunt call 911 and report a strange smell in the house. Maybe say it could be a gas leak. That way, the fire department would be obligated to check it out. My aunt agreed, and they ended the call, both still assuming it was probably just spoiled food. Less than an hour later, my aunt called back hysterical. The fire department had come, went into the upstairs unit, and found the tenant dead. She had passed away days earlier. The awful smell? It was her decomposing body. My mom did not believe her at first. She thought she must be joking. The woman couldn't actually have been dead for days right upstairs from my aunt. But she was not joking. What makes it even eerier is that the previous tenant, my aunt's father-in-law, had also died in that very same upstairs apartment. Since then, my aunt has left the upstairs vacant. She refuses to rent it out again. I think someone was following me through the woods in Ireland. Back when I was 14 years old, my family had moved from our home in England to the Republic of Ireland, where we lived for a further 6 years. We had first moved to the northwest of the country, but after a year of living there, we then relocated to the Irish Midlands, as my dad had gotten a new job working in Dublin. My parents had bought a cottage on the outskirts of a very small village. That was a stopping point from one of the larger towns to the next. This village was so small and remote, there was basically nothing to do. But not long after moving here, and taking to exploring the surrounding area with my border collie, Maisie, I eventually found a large stretch of bogland containing a man-made forest. Every weekend or half-term away from school, I took to walking this area with my dog, in which I would follow along a railway line used for transporting peat. However, after months of trekking this very same bogland, I eventually stopped going there. I can't quite recall the reason why, but maybe it was because I always felt as though I was trespassing, which I wasn't. Or because the bogland was so bumpy and uneven, I always came home with horrific blisters. Although I stopped going to this bogland to walk my dog, outside one of the nearby towns where I went to school, there was a public forest. Because this forest was a 20-minute drive away, my dad would take me and Maisie there, drop us off, and then pick us up again 2 or 3 hours later. What I loved about these woods was that it was always quiet, only with the occasional family, dog walker, or jogger passing us by. On one particular evening, I had gone back to these woods with Maisie, where my dad would later pick us up after running some errands. Making our way along the trail, the evening had already started to dim. Wanting to make my way back to the car park before it got too dark, I decided to take a shortcut through the forest via one of the many narrow side trails. Following down one of these side trails, me and Maisie stumbled upon a small, teepee-shaped hut made from logs. Loving a good game of hide-and-seek, I would sometimes hide inside this teepee when Maisie wasn't looking, where she would spend the next couple of minutes circling around the hut trying to find me, not realizing she could just go inside. Whether I played this game with Maisie that day, I'm not sure, but following down this exact same side trail, I turned to look behind me. Staring down the entryway, I then see a man walking 20 meters behind, having just taken this side trail. For some unknown reason, I had a strange instant feeling about this man, even though I had only just noticed him. I can't remember or even describe the way this man was walking, but the way he did so just felt suspicious to me. Listening to my instincts, or perhaps just my paranoia, I quickly latched my lead back onto Maisie and hurriedly make my way down the trail. A few minutes later, although I had reached back onto the main trail, the evening had already turned much darker. Again, turning to see if the man was behind me, I could still see him around the curve, only 10 meters away from me now. I did try to tell myself I was just being paranoid, and this man was most likely not following me, but my gut instinct still told me something was off. Thinking ahead, I pull out my phone to call my dad, as to make sure he was already in the car park waiting for me. But there was no answer. Because there was no answer, I just assumed he was probably still driving. Because he was still driving, I just hoped my dad was nearly on his way. By the time I make it back to the car park, it was basically pitch black by now. There was just one single car in the parking area. But it wasn't my dad's. Sitting down by a picnic bench to wait for him to come and get us, all I could do was hope he would be coming soon, and that this strange man from the woods was not following me after all. Only a minute or two later, I could hear the footsteps of this very same man approaching through the darkness. Anxiously anticipating him pass by, I tried to distract myself on my phone, or at least make myself seem less approachable. Thankfully enough, the man just walks completely by me. Entering the car park, the man then gets in his vehicle, the only car in the car park. But he doesn't drive away. He just stays there, sat inside his car with both the engine and headlights turned on. 20 minutes must have gone by, but my dad still wasn't here. And yet this very same stranger was. Trying to call and text my dad to say I was waiting for him, I was met with no answer. While I continued waiting, I tried to rationalize why this man hadn't decided to drive off. Whatever reasons I came up with, they were not very convincing for me. And for those whole 20 or however many more minutes, I sat outside those woods in complete darkness, hearing nothing but the hum of this stranger's engine among the silent night air. What made the situation even more anxiety-inducing was that my dog Maisie had been endlessly whining by my feet, scraping dirt away beneath the bench to make a surprisingly deep hole. Maisie was, in general, a very nervous dog and basically whined at everything, but perhaps she too felt as though something about this situation wasn't right. Thankfully, after what felt far longer than 20-so minutes, the strange man, already with his engine and headlights on, reverses from his parking spot, exits out of the car park and onto the main road, leaving me and Maisie in peace. Although we were now alone, basically stranded outside of a dark forest, I couldn't help but feel a huge sigh of relief come over me. My dad did eventually come and get us, 10 minutes after the man finally decided to drive off. Do you want to know what my dad's excuse was as to why he was so late? He forgot he had to pick us up. I don't know if that man really was following me through the forest, and I definitely don't know why he just sat in his car for 20 minutes. But if I had to learn anything from that experience, it would be the following. 1. My dad can sometimes be a careless douche. And 2. Never hike through the forest alone, late in the evening. Not exactly. I visited Seoul, South Korea last month and stayed in a pod or capsule hotel like a hostel. The women's room had 8 pods along one wall, and I lucked out with a corner pod by the window. The pod next to me already had an occupant. She was napping, but with her head at the entrance to her pod and the curtain open. A trench coat and white dress on hangers. After my post-flight nap, she was still there. This time she was lying on her back with a sheet mask covering her face. People choose a pod hotel because they're going to be out having fun in the city. It's not uncomfortable, but it's not somewhere you want to hang out all day. But the occupant of that pod was there every time I came in or left. She had no suitcase. The trench coat and dress never moved. And on the 3rd day, I realized I could never see her face. She'd be sleeping or hunched over her phone or using a sheet mask. I was there for 2 weeks, and so was she. Every day I wondered if I should try to chat with her, dispel my growing fear with the power of friendship. But I couldn't make myself do it. Somehow I knew. My pod was right next to hers. I started sleeping with my feet at the entrance, in case What? In case she touched my head? Yes. And I slept facing her pod, in case she could see me. In case her hand could reach through. Then one night I was resting in my pod and I heard, one half of a quiet phone conversation, maybe? Muffled and toneless. Rhythmic. After a few minutes, I turned around so my head was at my pod entrance, and I could hear it better. Is the bed comfortable? Is it comfortable? Listen, I know about Chuk-Sin and the questions she asks when you're in the toilet. I know about the slit-mouthed woman in Japan and her questions. No way was I answering her. Not a word. The next day, I came back home to America. Before I left the hotel, I thought I should ask the manager if that pod was occupied. But I was too chicken to ask. Too sure he'd say, no.